When Barron Trump notices Sylvester Stallone struggling to find a seat on a packed first-class flight, he makes an astonishing decision offering up his own seat for the legendary actor. But what happens next leaves everyone on board in utter disbelief. This unexpected act of generosity sets off a chain of events that no one could have foreseen. Barron Trump stepped into the first-class section of the crowded flight, his Secret Service agents shadowing him closely. As the son of newly inaugurated President Donald Trump, he was no stranger to attention. But today, something felt different. Just as he settled into his luxurious seat, a murmur spread through the cabin. A commotion had broken out near the entrance. Passengers whispered in hushed excitement as a towering, broad-shouldered man in dark sunglasses and a leather jacket hesitated at the front of first class. It was Sylvester Stallone. Excitement buzzed through the air, but there was a problem. First class was overbooked. The flight attendants exchanged frantic whispers, their expressions flustered. Somehow, a mix-up had left the Hollywood legend without a seat. Barron observed the scene, feeling an unexpected wave of empathy. This was Rocky, the man who had inspired millions, who had embodied resilience and perseverance. And yet, here he was, stranded without a place to sit. Without a moment's hesitation, Barron stood up. "Mr. Stallone, take my seat," he said with quiet resolve. A hush fell over the cabin. Stallone's eyes widened in shock. "No, kid, I can't take your seat," he protested. But Barron just smiled. "You deserve it, sir." As he stepped aside, he had no idea that this single act of kindness would lead to something far greater than he ever imagined. Passengers gasped. Camera flashes flickered. Some discreetly recorded the exchange. Social media was already ablaze with the moment. Stallone hesitated for a moment before placing a firm hand on Barron's shoulder. "You've got a big heart, kid," he murmured. But now, a new problem arose. Where would Barron sit? A flight attendant hurried over, apologizing profusely. "Mr. Trump, we'll find another arrangement for you," she assured. Barron simply shook his head. "It's all right. I'll take whatever seat is available." The only remaining spot? A cramped middle seat in economy class. A collective gasp rippled through first class. The president's son sitting in economy? A Secret Service agent leaned in. "Sir, this isn't safe." But Barron didn't care. He strode down the narrow aisle, brushing past stunned passengers, before squeezing into his new seat among everyday travelers. And then, something unimaginable happened. The elderly woman beside him suddenly clutched her chest, gasping for air. She was having a heart attack. Panic erupted. Flight attendants scrambled. A desperate cry echoed through the plane. "Help! Somebody help her!" Barron's pulse pounded. The woman's face had turned deathly pale, her trembling fingers clawing at her chest. "Is there a doctor on board?" A flight attendant called over the intercom. Silence. The Secret Service agents assessed the situation. One checked her pulse. "It's weak," he said grimly. From the front of the plane, Stallone heard the commotion. He shot up from his seat and rushed toward the back. "What's going on?" he demanded. But the moment his eyes landed on the elderly woman, his expression shifted from concern to something deeper, something personal. "I know her," he whispered. Barron's breath caught. "You know her?" Stallone nodded, his voice thick with emotion. "This woman, she saved my life once." A stunned silence fell over the passengers. But there was no time for questions. The woman, Evelyn, was fading fast. The pilot announced an emergency landing, but it was 30 minutes away. Barron clutched Evelyn's frail hand. "Stay with us," he pleaded. "You're strong." With great effort, Evelyn weakly squeezed his hand. Her lips trembled as she whispered something that sent a shiver down Barron's spine. "There's a letter in my bag. Give it to my son." Tears welled in Stallone's eyes. "What son?" he whispered. But before she could answer, her body went limp. A chilling silence spread through the plane. "Evelyn." Stallone shook her gently. Barron's heart pounded. Not now. Not like this. He refused to let her go. With a desperate urgency, Barron began CPR, pressing against her fragile chest. 1, 2, 3. The entire plane seemed frozen in time, passengers holding their breath. Then, a miracle. A faint gasp. She was alive. The plane landed. Paramedics rushed aboard, whisking Evelyn away. But Barron and Stallone couldn't ignore the letter. Later, in a quiet airport lounge, they carefully unfolded the envelope, their hands trembling. The words inside would change everything. To my son, whom I've never met. Stallone's breath hitched. Never met? The letter revealed a truth he never saw coming. Evelyn had given up her son at birth, believing it was for the best. But she had never stopped loving him. She had spent her entire life thinking about him. Stallone's fingers shook as he pulled out an old photograph from his wallet-a-faded picture of himself as a baby. The woman in the photo was Evelyn. She's my mother, Stallone choked out. Barron felt a chill. This wasn't just a letter. It was a lost connection. But the story wasn't over yet. Evelyn had left behind one final message, a key to a safety deposit box. Inside, they found more than just memories. They found the truth about Stallone's father. A father who had never abandoned him. A father who had lived in the shadows to protect him. Tears streamed down Stallone's face. All my life, I thought I was unwanted, he whispered, but they were protecting me. Barron placed a hand on his shoulder. You were never forgotten. As the plane soared home, Stallone turned to Barron. None of this would have happened if you hadn't given up your seat. Barron smiled. Maybe it was meant to happen. And sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness lead to the greatest journeys. As the days passed after the unforgettable flight, Barron Trump found himself reflecting on everything that had transpired. The story had gone viral, touching millions of hearts worldwide. Yet for Barron, it wasn't about the attention, it was about the profound realization that small acts of kindness could lead to life-changing moments. Meanwhile, Sylvester Stallone struggled with the weight of the revelations. He had spent his entire life believing he had been abandoned, never knowing the truth about his mother and father. Now, with his father's journal in hand and his mother's memory fresh in his mind, he felt like a man standing at the crossroads of past and future. There was still more to uncover. One evening, as Barron sat in his New York hotel suite, scrolling through the endless stream of messages and news reports about the incident, his phone buzzed. It was Stallone. Kid. Stallone's voice was gruff, yet filled with emotion. I need to see you. There's something I need to do, and I want you to be there for it. Barron immediately agreed. The next morning, he met Stallone at a quiet cafe, where the legendary actor slid a folded piece of paper across the table. It's an address, Stallone said. Daniel Crosby father's old military friend gave it to me. He said there's one last person who can tell me the full truth about my parents. Barron studied the address. It led to a small town outside Philadelphia. You coming with me? Stallone asked. Barron smiled. Wouldn't miss it. The drive was quiet, both men lost in thought. Stallone clutched his father's journal like a lifeline, rereading passages over and over. When they finally arrived at a modest suburban home, an elderly man was already waiting on the porch. His name was Walter Jennings, a retired intelligence officer who had served alongside Stallone's father. You must be Sylvester, Walter said, his eyes filled with recognition. You have your father's eyes. Stallone swallowed hard. I need to know the truth. Walter nodded solemnly and led them inside. The house was filled with old military memorabilia, framed photographs of soldiers, and books stacked high on every surface. Walter motioned for them to sit before he spoke. Your father wasn't just a soldier, he began. He was a protector. And your mother, she was in danger from the moment you were born. Barron and Stallone exchanged a glance. Walter sighed. There was a powerful man, someone high up, who wanted your mother silenced. She knew something she wasn't supposed to. Your father had no choice but to disappear to keep you both safe. But he never stopped watching over you from a distance. Stallone's hands clenched into fists. He could have told me. Walter shook his head. It wasn't that simple. He was being hunted. If he made contact, would have put you at risk. Barron leaned forward. Who was after them? Walter hesitated before finally saying, a man named Richard Calloway. He was one of the most powerful figures in Washington at the time. Your mother, she uncovered something about him that he wanted buried forever. Stallone's breath caught. His mother had been running from a man he had never even known existed. Calloway died years ago, Walter added. But the secrets he tried to bury, they might still be out there. A chill ran down Barron's spine. What secrets? Walter stood and retrieved a dusty lockbox from a cabinet. He placed it in front of Stallone. Your mother gave me this before she disappeared. She told me to give it to you when the time was right. Hands trembling, Stallone opened the box. Inside was a stack of letters, a few old photographs, and a key.